All right, it's showtime. The live stream even says it's showtime. I see the red counter ticking. Welcome everyone to Sunday night KloobySnack time. Hey Abby, what's happening?
Hey.
Hey, it's Sunday night. We're feeling all right, and we got some KloobySnack to get through. Number 19 tonight. How about that?
Yeah.
It was like, it seems like yesterday it was number 1. Now it's 19. 19 is almost to 26, right? Which would be halfway through. I mean, like, the midway point in the year is creeping up on us, and I think we just got started. Like, time goes fast now, right?
Yep.
KloobySnack.
Next thing you know, I'll be on the East Coast.
Yeah, you're going to be on the East Coast. All right. Yeah, and that's part of like what this is all about, is cutting the umbilical cord, getting ready to wish you off to college, passing down the family recipe, whether it is mom's recipe for the original KloobySnacks, the homemade cookies, or my motivational quotes, of which there are 52 in here, 48 of which you have responded to, journal style. We've broken them down. By now, people know there's 4 flavors or baker's dozens, right? We started with loving flavored, 13 of those. And now we're in our second baker's dozen, which is ego flavored, or I point to my head because I say sense of self, right? Ego in terms of sense of self. We'll review the quotes in the ego flavored, but when we're done with this baker's dozen, we're going to move on to discipline flavored and then loving flavored. So those are the 4 baker's dozens. Yeah. So why don't how about a review, or do you have anything that you want to say or share in terms of wins for the week, or how has your week been? We missed you last week because you were in rehearsals, and so
last week was busy. I had my last AP test, and we finished all of my coursework for all of my classes. So I still have a month left of school, but no school to do. So we're just I don't know. It was an accomplishment. Like, my senior year is like done. It's not really done. Academically, we're done.
Yeah. And on my side of things, classes wrapped up at San Diego State this week. So there's a big openings coming up in my calendar on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Sundays to some degree, because I would do a lot of grading on Sundays. So Mondays, Wednesdays are freeing up quite a bit for the next couple of months through the summer. So like literally, like all of a sudden, the midpoint in the year is upon us, right? The year seems so fresh and so new, not so long ago, but now like the entire spring semester is behind me, right? So summer and fall in front. It's how fast things go. It's why it's time to cherish. And then let's go ahead and just say Happy Mother's Day to everybody, all the moms out there and everybody else that celebrates Mother's Day for any reason, like all the reasons in the world. We all celebrate Mother's Day and we all celebrate moms. So Happy Mother's Day out there. What did we do for Mother's Day, Abby? What did our family do?
We went and we got sushi.
We got some sushi. How about that?
Sushi. Yeah. How about that apple?
Mom's favorite meal. If she only has one choice, it's going to be sushi, right?
Yep.
All right. So here we go. So in a review and catching us up to where we are this week, we're going to go ahead and get into ego flavored. So the following review of KloobySnack's motivational quotes, they're all kind of grouped into ego. They're all relate to sense of self and looking within and expanding our notion of how we self-identify and what gets in the way. And so here we go. That's the overall theme. But the first a motivational quote in this section was number 14. Surrender is not the same thing as defeat. It actually is like a sibling of quote number 13, which is the last quote in loving flavored. Vulnerable is not the same thing as threatened. Originally, those two were combined. And Abigail said, no, let's separate them and make them their own thing. We did, but they still ended up back to back in the book, just the end of one section, the beginning of another. I think that's kind of cute. So KloobySnack number 14 was the first in the ego flavor, and it's surrender is not the same thing as defeat. Then ego defense is an emotional fight or flight response. We're talking about how instinctual, how automatic it is that we defend our egos through either fight or flight, attack or ignore, right? This happens in our communication, personally, professionally, in relationships, at home, in the office, etc., right? Okay, so ego defense is an emotional fight or flight response. And then we went a little bit further the following week with KloobySnack number 16 and talking specifically about our judgments being an aggressive form of ego defense, attacking others to feel better about ourselves. And then it gets into projecting and so forth. And then we really asked people to look within on this one, KloobySnack number 17, the first part of which is actually familiar. We didn't make up the first part, but we just had to include the first part to the part that we did make up to make it work. And it goes a little something like this. You cannot laugh at others unless you can laugh at yourself. And If you love laughing at others, perhaps it's because you don't love yourself. We had a really good conversation about that 2 weeks ago with Sue Matheson, who came on board and was very vulnerable and talking about times where, we all were talking about times where we realized we were guilty of that. And it's just so true. And then last week, when you weren't here, Abigail, we've gotten into, we are usually guilty of the accusations we project onto others, right? So all of these motivational quotes, they stand alone, but look at how these last three these last couple pair together, right? Ego defense is an emotional fight or flight response. Our judgments are an aggressive form of ego defense. If you love laughing at others, maybe it's because you don't love laughing at yourself, or you don't love yourself, right? And then we're guilty of the accusations we project onto others last week. Wow. So that I think those are all those four kind of cluster together, because I don't know, this notion of ego defense maybe is too heavy to unpack just in one motivational quote. It commanded a couple. They were all saying different things when you look at them individually, but collectively they combined, I think, to focus our attention on the big opportunity when it comes to looking within. So that's a review of the KloobySnacks to date. That brings us to number 19. Are you ready to do like drum roll, Abby? Or here comes the reveal. All right, reveal.
Bless you.
Oh, wow. Excuse me. Big sneeze. Okay. So the snack goes like this. Asking questions does not reveal our intelligence nearly as much as failing to ask will. All right. Abigail, do you want me to screen share so people can read along?
Yeah.
You don't really care, but you don't mind?
Well, I mean, I read it from my book, so.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. All right. There we go. Let's do it. Go ahead, Abby.
I've always done well in my humanities-based classes, but I found myself struggling in any STEM-related subject. When I struggled with a concept, however, such as a unit circle in math, I never asked my teacher for any explanation or clarification. In my mind, if I did ask a question, the entire class would think less of my intelligence, making me look like a bad student. I've noticed a similar pattern in a lot of my classes where my fear of looking like a poor student has prevented me from asking for help. I quickly and quite harshly learned that avoiding asking questions was not the way to go. Being involved in class, staying for office hours, and getting a math tutor pushed me closer to success, opposed to the hole I dug myself in while sitting silently in the back of a classroom. When I'd attend office hours, I noticed that the other students who attended were the ones getting higher grades on the exams. In my mind, I assumed that the students who went the extra mile were the ones who performed worse. Among the numerous things that my dad does, he's a college professor. My sophomore year of high school, I went along with him during one of his work days, attending 2 of his classes and accompanying him during office hours. As I walked alongside him to his office, he explained how his office hours worked and then told me that students rarely take advantage of them. I discovered that apparently my struggles were not rare. Asking questions shows engagement, the crave for knowledge, and the willingness to learn. I'd always feared looking dumb, and unfortunately, not asking needed questions was reflected in my exam scores and grades. Looking at a quiet, unengaged student tells you a story, as does looking at a talkative, interactive student. Though I used to identify with the first type of student, I've learned that the only way to get the answers I want is by asking the questions I need.
Shazam. All right. There we go. There it is.
But my glitchy still up, not anymore.
What was that?
No, my camera was like glitching, but it's stopped.
Oh, okay. Well, I should say also now that, if anybody wants to join the conversation, it's Sunday night, it's Mother's Day. I don't expect anybody to join. Everybody should be busy, absolutely celebrating moms. We've already done that. And the show must go on. One of the unofficial definitions being professionals, the show must go on. So come rain or shine, we're going to do KloobySnacks every Sunday night for the year, 52 in a row. And yeah, no, this one's cool. This one's like, I don't know, Abigail, this is a little bit of homage to Dad. And, one of my, Diane Forster, shout out to Diane Forster. She's become like a sister to me. And when last time I saw her face to face, we were talking about this project, KloobySnacks, and she said something really beautiful. She was like, she sees you. And she was speaking about you now, and that you're able to see me in different lights, like instead of just being the disciplinarian or the dad or somebody you want to avoid because you don't have to explain yourself, or you don't want to be asked uncomfortable questions, or you don't have to answer to yourself, like whatever, right? There's so much in this book that shows that you see me a different way or understand me a different way in terms of what I may have to contribute to your world, right? Which is all a parent really wants. And so this is it's not too depthful. It's not too super emotional. It's very simple. It's like, hey, squeaky wheel gets the grease is one way to say it, right? But you also have to be confident and assertive, and yeah, for me, right? For me, office hours was like absolutely mandatory because I couldn't afford textbooks. So I thought I was at a disadvantage, right? And I think with your hearing or right, but regardless of whatever disadvantage we may think, as soon as you don't understand, you've got to ask, right?
Yeah.
What might either what is like more true now than it even was then, like it's even truer now, like because I'm asking the question like now with the benefit of 4, 5, 6 months between when you originally wrote your response and today, is there anything else you would add to what what you wrote?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, at the time, like the time period in my like life where I like really like when I needed answers like the most school wise, but I wouldn't ask them. That was like my sophomore year, and like I really struggled my sophomore year like academically to keep up because I wasn't asking questions in class, not even like in front of the class, but I'm not even like after class or during office hours. I wasn't sending any emails or anything because I was like, well, this makes me look like a bad student. But then as like time has gone on, I've gotten better at asking questions. But then since writing this KloobySnack, because that was in like November, I think that skill of mine has enhanced. And I think that asking questions and being engaged, like not only benefits me and like my scores, but also just like it creates like a connection with my teachers. And I like, so like all three of my classes I have right now, they're year long. So I've had these teachers the entire year. And throughout that year, this year I've been able to get a lot closer with my teachers, and it makes just the classroom overall just feel like less of a classroom environment and more, I don't know, just more welcoming. It's more fun to be there because I feel like a connection with my teachers because I'm not afraid to talk to them and ask them what I need rather than like doing my best to avoid them or like keep my head down in the hall so they wouldn't like bring up like my grades or ask me about like my tests or be like, why aren't you coming in? Instead of having that fear, I feel like comfortable with my teachers, and it's actually I do enjoy going to school. Yeah, but I think that like since November, I've gotten better at that, and from that, gotten closer with my teachers and be able to like enjoy school more. And
Yeah,
it's not scary.
from the teacher's perspective, right? From the teacher's perspective, the person that asks questions. Now, first of all, let me get my tongue out of my cheek, right? And then we just get the sassy part out of the way, can I? Because like I'll tell my students, like, be careful. Like I'll say nothing's more important than your questions. Your questions are the most important thing. But please be careful what you're asking, because sometimes your questions will reveal that you haven't held up your end of the bargain.
Mm-hmm.
You have to read the syllabus. You have to read the explanation of assignments. You have to pay attention when you come to class. You can't just come to class and then be on your phone and I say something, and then because you were on your phone while you were in class, you didn't hear what I said, and then you asked me to repeat something that I just got done saying. So those things are a little revealing. I cannot, take away the revealing nature of those types of questions when they reveal that you haven't done your work. But when it comes to revealing intelligence, nothing will reveal your intelligence more than the questions you fail to ask.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you ask a question that you should have known the answer to because you should have read the assignment, you should have read the syllabus, should have paid attention. Just asking from the teacher's perspective, just asking means you're fighting for yourself. Mm-hmm. Number one, right? And then to the degrees that the questions are more informed and more thoughtful and more how should I say, productive for the overall class, all the better. One of the things that I remember when I was in school was when I was in the classroom sessions, I was fighting, right? I was fighting from life. Everybody else thought, oh, I'm missing out. Everybody else gets to play Little League. Everybody else has a textbook, not Jeff, right? And that was my MO, my thought process. And so I was like leaning on every word, taking furious notes. I would think that I formalized an understanding. I would raise my hand to ask the question. So what you're saying is, if I understand right, right? And a lot of times I wasn't asking a question. I was just restating my understanding of what I heard and then asking him to tell me if I was right, if I got it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm fighting for my grade, but also I'm demonstrating that I was paying attention to what the person was just saying. Then guess what? I'm saying it in my words, not his.
Mm-hmm.
And then guess what happens? Then I felt all the other heads turn in the classroom because I just helped my students understand it. My classmates understand it better than they would have if I didn't ask the question.
Yeah.
So now they heard the professor, then they heard me put it in my lay terms. And then next thing I know, there was students waiting for me after class saying, hey, can we study with you? Can we study with you? Because I was that intent. And sometimes my question was just asking for clarification. Hey, do I get it? Do I understand properly? Have you had those experiences as well in the classroom?
Well, I want to first go back to something like what you said in the beginning about asking questions about things. Well, this isn't really that related. Asking questions about things that were like clearly stated. But for me, with my hearing, that adds like a whole other layer onto it. And I have weirdly a lot of teachers where they don't like to put stuff online or make it like any lectures or anything. They don't make it accessible for us so that we have to listen, which means that I don't get anything that they say. I don't have it in writing or digitally or anything. So I'd have to like really listen. And then before it would, especially coming into high school, it was hard for me because it's like I because of my hearing wouldn't hear something and I knew I would like I've missed something, but then not wanting to go up and ask. And then it's like it looks like either I didn't pay attention or I didn't want to, you know what I mean? The like revealing my lack of intelligence, any of that. And I think that I've since gotten better at that, obviously, and I'm very, very vocal now about what I missed and accommodations that aren't being met and all this stuff, which isn't related to what you were saying, but I just wanted to say that, which has been really, really helpful. Like speaking up for myself and asking questions and asking for clarification and being vocal when I know that I need something has been very powerful tool.
What we're trying to assist here is this: we're trying to assist or elevate or heighten or expand or bring compassion to people's sense of self, right? Yeah. KloobySnacks as a whole, or most of the work that I do, seeks to make it fun and easy, or more fun and more easy to look within. Everything that I do, I'm asking people all the time to look within, look within, look within, look within. Want to make it easy and fun to look within, and we have to, we want to look in our sense of self. So if we know who we are and we know what we want, asking questions is a byproduct of that. And if we don't know who we are and we don't know what we want, then failure to ask questions is a byproduct of that. Yeah. Right. And so what else do you got on this tip, on this particular KloobySnack tonight? Again, I don't think anybody's joining us. I think it's just me and you tonight on Mother's Day. Yeah.
Mother's Day. We already celebrated. I don't know. Kind of. I mean, I stand by what I said in the KloobySnack, that I think that I've noticed. I think that I always thought that if I was asking a question in class, like out loud in front of the whole class, if I asked a question, then I would look dumb to the rest of my classmates or to my teacher. But then I noticed that I never thought that about other people. Like there was never a time where like somebody else asked a question and I was like, oh, they don't understand. It was like, oh, like they're actually engaged and I'm not even able to like ask a question or ask for clarification or something to like meet my needs. But I do think that a lot of the, like if I do this, then I'll be perceived this way. It's like it's all just internal, which I think that like this KloobySnack reflects.
I must have, embarrassingly or vulnerably, I'll admit that when I was younger and less mature, and I'm, so much less mature in my early college days than you are already now, right? But I remember there was one particular class. It was English 220. It was a literature class. It was a big class. There was, over 100, maybe 200 people in the class, a literature class. You just read books all semester. And this professor was out there. Like his name was Larry McCaffrey. And he was taking us through like the classics, like, Hemingway, through, avant-garde, avant-pop, and like progressive. And like he was taking us through where to like, it was, really hard to understand some of the stuff that he wanted us to read, some of the in the movie that he wanted us to watch. And it was challenging. I can't ignore that. And you had to fight really hard to try to get into this guy's head. And he had like he was protected, like you felt like he could do whatever he wanted in the classroom. He was he really had some stature, and he meant no malice. He was just out there a little bit. And
that's what my English teacher is.
it was so I look back on it because it was cool. Like he had us read Bruce Springsteen lyrics or Jim Morrison lyrics, but also Ernest Hemingway, and he had us read Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. About
reading that in my class right now.
Yeah, and so and like I remember there was a couple of us that were just fighting for our grade, and like we'd study, we'd talk about it, we'd read the books, and we'd get together. And so I remember sometimes Monty's on campus. Like you'd go and you'd get a beer, and you'd see McCaffrey walk in and drink a pitcher of beer with his assistants, and then you'd go into class and he would lecture. And there was something like he was like really cool about the guy, but he wasn't conventional. He didn't just say, "All right, here A, B, C, D, E. That's going to be on the like here. This is." You had to think for yourself, and you had to work, and you had to read, and yet it was going to be essays and composition and how well you articulate your thoughts. And at the end of the semester, he's like literally giving us the answers. He's finally bringing it all together at the end of the semester, and he's like, I remember taking furious notes because everything that was coming out of his mouth was like answering the questions that he had introduced for you. It was just amazing. It was all coming together. And in that moment where I was like, oh my God, finally, okay, yeah, all right, I know exactly what I'm going to write now on my essay, right? Like somebody stands up on the other side of the room, and it was like a sorority girl that, who knows, I'm stereotyping and I'm not happy about it, but that's the truth that I was doing at the time. And she says, can you just tell us what's going to be on the test? Right? And so is that a question? What's going to be on the test? But how you're saying what you're saying is in fact. So she wasn't really even asking a question. She was just criticizing the guy, standing up on her feet, and she felt empowered to just criticize. Like, right? Anyway, and I don't know. Maybe I was upset because I was interrupted with my own note taking and the own clarity, or I felt, I don't know. It was just weird, but I remember feeling very, very, very judgmental of that person for asking that question at that time. All right. But I was immature. I was young. Otherwise, right? Like, and then that's the only other example that I can think of is like what I said, like, hey, sometimes you're asking questions, which shows me that you aren't holding up your end of the bargain. The only reason you're asking me is because you haven't read. Okay. Well, at least you're asking. Right. At least you're still fighting for your grade, or right now there's something that you want to know.
Yeah, I think that asking questions, I think not holding up your end of the bargain and then asking questions is better than not holding up your end of the bargain, but then not even trying to. And
not asking at all. All right. Oh, and here's what's worse from the teacher's perspective. And we're just talking about teaching now, but this should be true. And we should think about other relationships. I mean, other contexts, right? As well, in the workplace or at home, with our loved ones, with our coworkers, colleagues, etc. But while we're still in the learning concept from the teacher's perspective, the worst is, like you say, well, it's one thing to ask questions that shows that you haven't read the instructions. Okay, but that's worse than not reading the instructions and not asking questions. And then worse than that is then producing work that reflects that you don't know what you're supposed to do, and then getting a bad grade, and then waiting to get the bad grade to then ask the question, well, why did I get a bad grade?
Yeah.
And then it's like, now you're not even asking why you got a bad grade. You should already know why you got a bad grade. It's because you didn't read the instructions. You didn't do the assignment properly. Right? So that's not even what they're asking. They're not even asking, why did I get a bad grade? They're asking, why can't I be excused for the work I didn't do? Right? And can I give you one more, and then we'll go to last call?
Yeah.
Here's another thing that happens in the classroom that I try to preempt at the beginning of the semester. I tell my students, I say, hey, look, if you're not in class, okay, don't tell me the story why you weren't in class. I already know the reason you weren't in class. It's because something else was more important, period. So save your time thinking it, save your time rehearsing it, save your time writing it, save my time reading it or listening to it. And I tell them, if you don't turn in an assignment, I already know why. It's because something else was more important. You don't have to explain. You don't have to tell the story, right? If you turn in something late, I know why. If you turn in something poor, I know why. It's because something else is more important. I already know the reason. So don't tell me the reason, because the only reason you're telling me the reason is because you want to be excused for the poor work. You want something else to be more important, but you don't want that to affect your grade. And it doesn't work like that, right? And so then what happens is people will miss an assignment and they'll say, and this is the pattern, it goes like this all the time. Hey, Professor Kluback, even though I've said call me Jeff, right? Story, 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 and story, 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 story. So would it be okay if I turned in, could I still, they say, could I still do my thing? And it's like, when was it ever not okay for you to do your work? So here's the thing is what I'm telling them is, would it be okay if you just did your work? Like the only reason you're saying would it be okay is because you want to find out if you're still going to get credit for it. You're not really asking would it be okay. Of course it's okay if you do the assignment. The assignment's there for a reason. Of course it's okay if you do the assignment. Yeah, but I turned it in late. Will I still get credit for it? Aha. You're not asking if it's okay if you do the assignment. You're asking is you're telling me you're only going to do it if you get credit. And if you're not going to get any points, you're not going to do the assignment, which is telling me who you are, what kind of a student you are, right? Yeah. So there's instances like that where it's not necessarily the intelligence that's being revealed, but certainly asking questions can reveal our motives, can reveal our status, can reveal our intentions, if not our intelligence. Yeah. Right? What we're saying in this KloobySnack is that it's always smarter to ask than to not ask, but it's always smarter to do what you need to do so that you don't have to ask. That's the smartest thing. But when in doubt, ask it out. What do you got, Abby?
Nothing on that. I had something to. Well, I didn't have a last call. I just have.
Okay.
I skipped ahead and I looked at the next KloobySnack for next week, and this is like one of my favorite ones, or one of them. I don't know. I just really like the next one.
Do you want to preview it?
We can preview it, but then I also like my response. I was proud of this one. This was a lot of reflection and a lot of like vulnerability within this one, and it was difficult, but very healing and effective. And
well, without revealing it, because there's a couple hundred people out there that have their copy of KloobySnacks available on Amazon. Yeah. There's a couple hundred people out there that have their own copy, so they could look ahead and check it out. But without to keep it a secret or wait for the big reveal. Now you've got me looking ahead to number 20.
I like this.
Oh boy, yeah, I say this one a lot. And by the way, I'm guilty of this a lot. I mean, because it's hard not to be. And when I say guilty, I don't mean like I've done something wrong, but I do know that that's something that I'm hyper aware of in my own work. I think it's one of the things that has me successful a little bit. Like when I did a speech, my most recent keynote for the San Diego Society of Human Resources Management, one of the compliments I got after when I gave the Integrity Game keynote was like, hey, I like your metaphors. Like when the shoelaces, or the boat to go discover new land with, or I come up with images or metaphors that try to make what I'm saying more digestible, because if I rely on jargon and all of the words that I read in my textbooks, those words aren't going to land with my audience, right? So It's a good one. Yeah, I'm not going to reveal the word for word snack, but I can't wait, because there's a hefty amount of response. I looked. There's like 2 good full pages.
Yeah. Did you see what the response was about? Did you see it? I really like this one, and I didn't talk about this throughout the rest of the book. I like.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I remember when I wrote it, and I was proud of it, and it felt good to like actually finally address this like internal like thing that I'd already like acknowledged internally, but had never like really fully. You know what I mean? I just like this one. I'm excited for next week.
Good. Yeah. Well, I appreciate how engaged you've been in the project all along, rather than, all right, we got the book done, Dad, that's it. But like showing up every week and having our little conversation as we do. Yeah. It's definitely good for us. We hope it's good for others, even though I didn't expect anybody to join us tonight. I have seen some eyeballs pop on the little eyeball meter out there in social media, and who knows who's going to watch a recording of this as their public domain now sprayed onto the social media channels. Yeah. But it's just fun to see you every week in this way, in this fashion. And we are steadily moving our way through. Like before we know it, we're going to be halfway done with the book. Yeah, just a handful of KloobySnacks left. We're halfway through. So last call, comments, coach, quotes, or jokes, or questions, or limericks, whatever. Last call for anything under the sun that you want to ask or share or tell. Or
one on the thing, it says expressions of gratitude. So this is my formal expression of gratitude to my mom. Love you, Queen. She's never going to see this. She has no clue that I'm saying this, but it's Mother's Day. So this is I love my mom.
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
whole sappy speech, but it's never gonna get back to her. So we're keeping it short.
Unless we go tell her once we log off the session. Yeah, but I mean, she's not like sitting there on social media, like waiting to like and comment and share. That is for sure. Not mom.
Love her regardless. Happy Mother's Day, Queen.
Yeah, she's everything. And, and it goes for all the moms out there. I mean, I said it at dinner. I'll say it again, just real quick, just to get it out of the way. It's my personal belief, right, that men are, inferior to women insofar as we cannot produce life inside of us, right? We will never know what that's like, is to reproduce inside. I remember when mom was pregnant with, AJ, or even with you, she would say, oh, and she would grab my hand. Oh, feel this, right? And her face would be like just alive with wonder about what's going on inside of her. And she would, to her credit, she would want to, share and want to involve me. And then she'd grab my hand and, and she'd go, it was the hardest thing in the world, Abby. Like my hand would be there on the tongue and I'm leaning in, right? And I'm a very perceptive dude, right? Like I can, pick up on a bunch of stuff. And then her face would go, oh, do you feel that? And I'm like, no, I don't feel it. And I'm just like, there's something I'll never be able to feel.
Yeah.
Right. There's something we will so we like men, like historically, we have to know that, right? Like all men must know on some level that you guys can do what we cannot do. So the rest of our existence has been, for better or worse. And I think a lot of worse and some better, but like it's both, right? But a lot of worse that I don't like. We're overcompensating. We're making a mess of things. We're trying to like dominate and own and destroy, control, and everywhere. And if we just found the mechanisms to get real about the I don't know how to explain it, right? But like we'll get back to balance if we recognize the natural imbalance rather than creating such an imbalance that the natural balance is lost on us.
Yeah.
Does that help? Does that make sense?
I got that. I speak that language.
Okay.
I don't know about the other. I speak that.
So Mother's Day, it's a cool day. It's like, why just Mother's Day? Like what? Like every day.
I love my girl every day. Don't worry.
We gotta, and I, hey, anyway, that's my 2 cents. We're inferior and we're overcompensating. We got to restore balance, and
yep.
That's that. That's how I feel about women, and props to all the moms out there.
Yep, especially mine.
Yeah, especially yours.
Yep.
All right. Well, there you have it. That's KloobySnack number 19.
Yep.
And it's 2-0 is a big number next week.
That's really crazy.
2-0. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Abby. You're the best. I'll talk with you soon. Good night, everyone. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks for joining KloobySnack Time with Abby and myself. We'll see everybody next week.